I had a very small question about one of the points we left off on. You said you had 7 primary movement patterns, or however you described it, but then you said squatting, hinging, lunging, pressing, pulling,
squatting,
bending,
lunging, bending,
right,
pushing,
right,
pulling, and twisting.
Twisting, and that was 6.
7. Squat, lunge, bend, push, pull, twist. Oh, yeah, is it 6? Squat, lunge, bend, push, pull, twist. Oh, okay, it is 6.
Okay, I thought we missed one. Okay, cool.
I brain farted there. I guess counted too quickly.
In the break, we had our statistician.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
We were counting
Yes,
up.
you're right. I left one out.
Oh, okay.
Gait.
Okay.
Walking.
Walking,
Yeah.
running.
Gotcha.
I left one out. Because I know this stuff so intimately, I don't think about it like that anymore. But the 7th pattern is gait. And here's an interesting thing I'll tell you, since you're talking about that. I'll tell you what's one of the most powerful experiences you can have as a pioneer of anything. I told you how I figured this all out, right? Remember that discussion?
Writing everything.
What does a man have to do, a human have to do to survive in nature? And so I wrote all the things down. Like, I just looked at everything, and I grew up on Vancouver Island. I'm a hunter. I know what it's like to be out in the woods. I've done all sorts of journeys out in the woods for multiple days at a time. I was a soldier. I was in the 82nd Airborne Division, so I know what it's like to be out in the woods, right? So I just went through the process. Well, you're walking on a trail, you come to a great big log. You got to get over it. So you have to use a lunging type movement. You have to, if you kill an animal, you can't just say, follow me home so I can eat you. You got to pack it home. And how do you pick it up? You got to bend over to pick it up. You got to get it up on your back. You can't walk without twisting. Every single joint in your body functions on what's called triplanar movement, which means there's always flexion, extension, side bending, and rotation, no matter what you think. Even when you're bending forward in the sagittal plane, there's triplanar movements going on because nobody's perfectly symmetrical in their body, for example. So check this out. In 2000, I think it was, I did an advanced training program for 7 days in the Czech Republic with 2 of my heroes, Vladimir Yonda, who's a serious pioneer of musculoskeletal medicine, and Carol Levitt, who was his primary teacher and is one of the people whose work I studied quite a lot to understand the integration of the glands, the organs, and the musculoskeletal system. You can look at his book, Manipulative Therapy and the Rehabilitation of the Locomotor System, which is very, very deep and comprehensive and expensive. So they gave an advanced training at the Charles Hospital in Prague. And part of it was, in that hospital was where Dr. Vojta, who had done 50 years of research on child development and had developed an entire system of infant development that can be used to rehabilitate people from spinal cord injuries, brain injuries, comas. And he found there's reflex points on the body that you can touch. And if you touch them in the right sequence, it activates programs in the brain and spinal cord that activate movement patterns that are infant movement patterns, the very patterns an infant has to go through to integrate their musculoskeletal, hormonal, nervous, and biological systems. So I was so fascinated by this, I bought piles of books on infant development and studied it extensively. I got them all in the library if you want to see them. And lo and behold, guess what I found out? There are 7 movements that an infant has to go through: squatting, lunging, bending, pushing, pulling, and twisting. And I was able to correlate those with my primal pattern system, so I developed my own system of teaching infant development through several years of research and the training at the Czech Republic, and was able to show that exactly the 7 movement patterns that we have to survive in nature are the ones that an infant has to go through to integrate their musculoskeletal, brain, nervous system, hormonal system, and biological systems. And I developed a whole system of infant development movement assessment and was able to apply it to athletes and people worldwide, and could show exactly where they did not do infant development correctly because of environmental stressors such as hard floors that kids can't crawl on because it hurts their knees, so they skip developmental steps, or inflammation in the guts. I've rehabbed kids that had terrible back and hip pain and nobody could figure out, but they didn't realize the child was gluten intolerant, which was stopping the child from being able to rotate and shutting its core down, so it wouldn't do key movement patterns, couldn't walk correctly. I've saved people from all sorts of surgical procedures that the doctors were going to do on them by identifying where they did not develop their motor skills correctly. But the key point, the eureka moment, is when I figured out that the same exact movement patterns are what we go through as children that I had identified as primal pattern movements when I was like 26 or 7 years old by doing a reductive analysis without any awareness of it. Then you see that your intuition's working. Then you realize that having an open mind and observing and paying attention and practicing will always take you where you need to go. And it's far more important to do that than to listen to some dude standing in front of a class called a professor telling you all the shit that you're supposed to know when most of them can't even demonstrate any evidence of that themselves. Like I've seen lots of experts on weightlifting that can't lift weights. Right? So, like...
Most of them, they're broken.
We all went through undergrad and graduate school for kinesiology, and a lot of people that graduated with us, they have degrees in the field, and they have no idea how to train.
Exactly. I've had numerous cases of people with master's degrees in exercise and sports science, kinesiology, and all sorts of degrees who have told me they learned more in one of my 3-day workshops than they did in their entire master's degree program, and it's practical. It works. And this goes back to learning. You see, I studied situationally, and instead of listening to professors, I said, who is the best person in the world at this problem? And I fortunately was making enough money that I could hire these people for a day at a time, whether it cost sometimes $2,000 a day to go sit and ask questions and learn. So I went right to the masters. And my whole system is really a collection of the knowledge I gained from studying the masters. Rarely ever were they academic people. I mean, they might have had a degree, but they were way past all that. They just said, that stuff doesn't work. Or that part did, but that part didn't.
Well, where does so much of the stuff that you're working on, it is not built in academia, or it's I guess you could say it's supported by academia.
Some of it is, it's very, It's not that academia is bad. It's just that it doesn't make the gap to practical applications, and it often is so segmented, it makes the mistake of believing partial truths as facts. And it takes someone with more processing power or power of integration and general knowledge of multiple fields to say, okay, that fits, but only to this point, and you got to add the knowledge of this. For example, you have to have a knowledge of how the glands and the organs work for an athlete to achieve optimal strength, or they will break down, and they will not know how to eat right, and they won't know the ramifications of all their protein powders and blah, 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 right? So there's a lot of great knowledge, and I've studied massive amounts of science, and I am not against science. I just say you have to be very careful with how you use it, because scientific studies are like knives. You got to be careful with a knife. It can be a helpful tool, but it can be a dangerous tool, right? So that's really the comment on that.